whatever the handouts are. We can share.
So if you can get your coffee and get seated, we'll get started here in a minute. We are happy to welcome one of our regular speakers, Pastor Professor Jim Limburg, is going to talk today on the book of Ruth. We're always pleased to have him here because of his knowledge and speaking. So welcome, Pastor Limburg.
Thank you, Enid. I told Enid that when I finished grad school, we were going to get a call from Enid, Oklahoma. Actually, it didn't come until sometime later, but at any rate, you're not the first Enid, but the other was a whole city. I want to start by asking you to look at your green sheet, and we're going to do a little bit of Hebrew. Now, a number of you have been saying to me, can't we learn some Hebrew? I won't tell you what the number is, but anyway, we want to take a look at this because it's a key word in the book of Ruth. So if you look at the green sheet, I'm going to say a few words and ask you to repeat. It starts, Hine Matov. Everybody? Now, if you need a sheet, put your hand up and somebody will bring one to you. Yeah, the sheets are back there. Once again, Hine Matov. Hine Matov Umanaim. Hine Matov Umanaim. Now, if you go to a kindergarten, and I've sat in on Jewish kindergartens, the greeting that you give when the teacher comes in is you say, Boker Tov. That means good morning. Tov is good. Or if the student does well on a paper, the teacher will say, Tov Ma'od. Very good. So once again, after me, Hine Matov. Hine Matov Umanaim. Shevet Achim. Let's hear a nice Achim. Shevet Achim. Pretend you're in Munich. Shevet Achim. Excellent. Jim is natural at Hebrew here. Gam Yachad. All right, so it's Hine Matov Umanaim. Everybody. Hine Matov Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. All right, that's going to come up in the book of Ruth. Now we're going to learn to sing it. We might as well sing it. How's that? Yeah. Okay. I've taught for a number of years, in fact, just about 40 years, and I think every class that I've taught, I've started by learning Hine Matov Umanaim, Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, which means, behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity. And it's not working? Straight on. There we go. Thank you, Noah. Okay. Let's do it once more because I like to play it on the piano. Here we go. Once again. Hine ma tovu manaim shevet achim gam yachad. Here we go. Very nicely, let's all begin by praying. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you that you put us in groups so that we can learn together, so that we can study, so that we can enjoy the beautiful day you've given us. Continue to be with us. Help us as we read through this ancient book. Let it become for us a book of life. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't know how many of you noticed, but Eugene Peterson died. Now, who was Eugene Peterson? He's the one who did the Message translation. Here is the paper that I have for October 26th, and it says that his writings have shaped the thinking of pastors and church people. Translations of the Bible. The Message has sold millions of copies. He was 85 years old. So, that's a little bit about the translator of the Message. And my wife and I read a portion of this each morning. It's the way we get our day started. And if you don't have this, I think if you are going to buy a Bible, you might as well buy this one. Buy it. The thing that's interesting about it is that it's translated from the original. In other words, Eugene Peterson went back to the original. The Bible was written in 3 different languages: the original Hebrew, the original Aramaic, and the original Greek. So he did that, and it's an excellent translation, and you could get acquainted with it. Now, I was asked by Bob Morris. Bob's not here, I don't think. He's been ailing. How's Bob doing? Anybody know? I haven't talked to him for a while. At any rate, Bob asked me if I would come and do 2 sessions on Ruth. Well, a lot of things have happened since that time. We should pray for our pastor also. We try to remember to do that. And one of the things that they had planned to do before any of the illnesses or whatever is to go through the book of Ruth under the title Ruth Who Was an Outsider. And here you see, here's a bulletin from last Sunday. I'm going to read just a little section from a book that I wrote that has some Ruth in it. Here is the from the book of Ruth. After hearing of the military exploits of Gideon, after hearing of the military exploits of Gideon and the bawdy escapades of Samson, you know, all the wild things these judges were doing, we now encounter this idyllic story of life in the little town of Bethlehem. This is a story taken from everyday life in a rural village, where the men and women work together in the fields, where nothing extraordinary seems to happen. There are no great battles in this book. There are no ringing speeches. There are ordinary people coping with problems like crop failure or the loss of a spouse or a son, and celebrating events like the birth of a child. So that's what Ruth is. It's just a little family story in the middle of all of these sort of wild and crazy stories that you get about these characters known as the judges. I put a second thing down here. If you were to look in your Bible and look at the first genealogy, which comes up in Matthew chapter 1. If you look there, you will see that there are 5 women named: Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, the wife of Uriah. Who is the wife of Uriah? Bathsheba, that was Bathsheba, and Mary. Now these 5 women all have something in common. What is there about them? Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, the wife of Uriah, and Mary. What about each of them? Not Israelites. Exactly. They are, shall we say, outside. And each of them has a role to play in the story of the birth of Jesus. So here are these 5 women, which include Ruth, the wife of Uriah. Now I want to just go through some of this. The setting for this story is the time of the judges. Who were the judges? Well, these were leaders that took over temporarily when there was trouble in Israel, when all of the people, as it says in the Bible, did what was right in their own eyes. So the time of the judges was a time when there was no orderly democracy. There was nothing going on that was all very organized and so on. But it was a time when everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And you read some of these stories, and you read of rapes, you read of killings, of battles. People with names like Gideon was a judge, and Samson was a judge, and so on. When were these stories written down? Well, we can determine that they were written down during the period of the exile. And if you were to look at the back of one of the sheets I gave you, is it on the back of the green sheet? See that you should look and discover that here is a part of the land where the Israelites live. What's this sea up here? Just a little review. What is the sea that's way up here in the north? Not the Dead Sea. Galilee. Excellent. Sea of Galilee. The river going down like this is what river? Jordan. The Jordan River. And why is it called Jordan? Because the 3 letters that are at the root of Jordan are YRD, Yardan. It's the Jordan River. It means the river that goes down. Well, I guess they all do. And this, the water flows into this body of water. What is it?
Dead Sea.
How many have been swimming in the Dead Sea? Put your hand up. I walked on it. Our pastor here has walked in it, not on it. Okay. Well, anyway, that's what we've got here. And here is Moab, and over here I just put a J for Judah. And this is a story about a woman from Moab who goes with her daughter-in-law to return to her home in Judah. So that's what it's all about. And if you look at any map, you can see where these places are. Okay. Well, I said that the structure of the story, there are 4 scenes. We've already looked at some of them or heard about some of them. 4 scenes with an introduction and 4 transitions. Genre. What do we mean by genre? Well, what kind of material is it? What are some genres that you find in the Bible? In the New Testament, there are lots of Gospels. There are parables. There are letters. These are all different genres or types of material. And what we've got here is a family story, or shall we say a love story, or with a correction, really 2 love stories. It has to be this way, doesn't it? Okay. Two love stories. And then because I like German words, what is this? This is going to be called a guidance story. Or if we use the German word, read what the Germans with this, it's called a Führungsgeschichte. Noel, would you pronounce that, please? Yes, beautifully done over here. We've got the German. A guidance story is what we have. Okay. Now we come to the story itself, and it's all revolving around this question: how will these women survive in a man's world? And Noel, I'm going to ask you to read a little bit from the green sheets. And let's get this first little section in front of us here. Scene 1 on the road to Bethlehem. Blue. It's on the blue sheet, right? Yeah. And this is from Peterson's translation. So Noel, if you'll read for us the first 5 verses. This tells us how these women will survive, or asks the question, how are they going to survive in a man's world? Please.
Once upon a time, it was back in the days when judges led Israel, there was a famine in the land. A man from Bethlehem in Judah left home to live in the country. He and his wife and his 2 sons.
All right, this man, he leaves where he was living in Judah. It reminds me of my grandfather left South Dakota because the weather was bad and the crops weren't good, and he went to Iowa. So because of poor crops, this fellow left Judah and went to Moab. Continue, please, no.
The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. His sons were Mahlon and Chilion.
His wife's name was Naomi. Interestingly, how do you say Naomi in Hebrew? Naomi. There it is. There's the word in Hebrew. Okay, he went with his wife. Continue.
All Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They all went to the country of Moab and settled there.
Okay. Good. A couple more verses. Please, no.
Elimelech died and Naomi was left, she and her 2 sons.
Elimelech, all these Hebrew names are kind of fun. Elimelech, what does that mean? Melech means king. Eli, what does El mean in Hebrew? You all know. What's the word El? God. So what is, if your name is Elimelech, what does that mean? God is king. Okay, so God is king died and Naomi was left. No.
She and her 2 sons. The sons took Moabite wives. The name of the first was Orpah.
Orpah. Now, what name, modern name that you all know, is based on a misreading of this? Oprah. Oprah. It's Oprah. And if you check in Google, there should be something in here. If you look in Google and look up Orpah, you will see that that it's Oprah or Orpah, and the original form was Oprah, according to such sources as Google. All right, continue. The name of the first was Orpah, and the second?
Ruth.
Continue.
They lived there in Moab for the next 10 years.
All right.
But then the 2 brothers, Mahlon and Chilion, died. Now the woman was left without either her young men or her husband.
All right, so what happens, we're getting things set up, and what happens is that we have 3 widows. We have Naomi, who's now a widow because her husband Elimelech has died. We have here 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and who's the other one? Ruth. These are the daughters-in-law. And the question is, how are they going to make it in this world? Well, we know that for women to make it on their own nowadays, it's not always so easy. Widows, we live over now at a place called the Waters, and we've got all kinds of widows Most of them are making it pretty well, but you know, that's what happens. So much for that. Now the next section talks about them being on the road. And let's read through a bit of this. Ann, do you want to read some of this, please? And then we're going to we need to quit at 10:20, so we will get to chapter 3. Go ahead, Ann.
One day she got herself together, she and her 2 daughters-in-law, to leave the country of Moab and set out for home. She had heard that God had been pleased to visit his people and give them.
All right, like my grandfather left in South Dakota and went to Iowa because he heard the crops were better. Go ahead.
And so she started out from the place she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, on the road back to the land of Judah.
So they're going back, they're heading back west to the land of Judah, over here toward Jerusalem. Continue, please, Ann.
After a short while on the road, Naomi told her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, go home and live with your mothers, and may God treat you as graciously as you treated your deceased husbands and me. May God give each of you a new home and a new husband." She kissed them, and they cried openly.
So they all part. They're going to split up. And they said, "No, we want to go back to you and your people. And we can understand you and hear you very well." Can you hear? Okay. Go ahead, please.
But Naomi was firm. "Go back, my dear daughters. Why would you come with me? Do you suppose I still have sons in my womb who can become your future husbands? Go back, dear daughters. On your way, please. I'm too old to get a husband. Why, even if I said, 'There's still hope,' and this very night got a man and had sons, can you imagine being satisfied to wait until they were grown?"
All right, well, she has a little bit of sense of irony or humor or something. Like, pregnant tonight, do you think that wait till one of them's eligible to marry? Go ahead, please.
Would you wait that long to get married again? No, dear daughters, this is a bitter pill for me to swallow, more bitter for me than for you. God has dealt me a hard blow. Again they cried openly. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth embraced her and held on.
All right, so who have we got? We've got Ruth going down the road now, and she is with her mother-in-law, Naomi. Well, let's pick it up now, the next section that we have here, and I'm going to ask one of the younger people in our group to read a bit. Where is Elena? Oh, she's in Sunday school, where she should be. Good. All right, well, let's say verse 16. Why don't we ask Sonia, can you read a bit there?
But Ruth said, "Don't force me to leave you. Don't make me go home. Where you go, I go. And where you live, I'll live. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you die, I'll die. And that's where I'll be buried. Still help me, God. Not even death itself is going to come between."
All right, we hear these very often performed in churches. Where you go, I go. Don't make me go home. Your people are my people. Where do you hear that? Who's speaking to who? Weddings, yeah. Well, that ain't the way it was originally. It's a mother-in-law to a daughter-in-law, right? Okay, Sonia, a little bit further, please.
When Naomi saw that Ruth had her heart set on going with her, she gave in, and so the 2 of them traveled on together to Bethlehem.
Continue.
And when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was soon buzzing.
Can you imagine a little town of Bethlehem, and now the whole town is buzzing? Go ahead.
Is this really our Naomi? And after all this time? But she said, "Don't call me Naomi, call me bitter."
Don't call me Naomi. We know what Naomi means. What does it mean? It means happy or pleasant. Don't call me pleasant or happy. Call me Mara, which means bitter. Continue, Sonia.
The strong one has dealt me call me Naomi. God certainly doesn't. The strong one is born.
Yeah, why would you call me Naomi? Why are you going to call me happy? I certainly haven't had a happy life. So it says Naomi was back. She's back in town. Lulu's back in town. Remember that song? I can't help it. I've got all these in my head. So Naomi was back, and Ruth, the foreigner, with her, back from the country of Moab. They arrived in Bethlehem. Now there's a little bit of light, a little bit of upbeatness here. Naomi was back from the country of Moab. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Good time or bad time? Good time. Barley harvest. Okay. So that's the first part. Now we go to chapter 2 of the story. Well, let's pick this up a little bit here. Who wants to read? Somebody from over here. Who would like to read, starting in chapter 2, verse 1? Please.
It so happened that Naomi had a relative by marriage, a man prominent and rich, connected with Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz.
All right, this is Boaz. Now, he's related by marriage. He's rich and prominent, and he's connected with Elimelech's family. All right, continue.
One day, Ruth, the Moabite foreigner, said to Naomi, I'm going to work. I'm going out to glean among the sheep, following after some harvester who will treat me kindly.
I'm going out to work. What does it mean to glean? Anybody know what gleaning is? Clean up the leftovers. I remember teaching this one time at Augustana College, and a student said, yeah, we used to do that in North Dakota. What did they glean? What did they pick up? Potatoes. He pronounced it potatoes. We used to pick up potatoes in North Dakota. And then somebody else in the class said, yeah, we got to get the potatoes, but we had to go and get them ourselves. The government didn't hand them out to us. So you politician. Okay, Naomi said, go ahead, dear daughter. Well, go a little further, please.
And so she set out. She went and started gleaning in a field, following in the wake of the harvesters. Eventually, she ended up in the part of the field owned by Boaz, her father-in-law, Elimelech's relative. A little later, Boaz came out from Bethlehem, greeting his harvesters. God be with you, he replied, and God bless you.
Well, here comes Boaz. You kind of like this guy, and he says, God be with you. And they said, and God bless you. You're a good reader. Continue a little further.
Boaz asked his young servant, who was foreman over the farm hands, who is this young woman? Where did she come from?
Who is this young woman? I imagine her as being, having dark eyes, dark hair, quite beautiful. And who is this young woman? They said, where did she come from? Oh, she came from.
The foreman said, why, that's the Moabite girl, the one who came with Naomi from the country of Moab. She asked permission. Let me glean, she said, and gather among the sheaves following after your harvesters. She's been at it steady ever since, from early morning until now, without so much as a break.
What do we learn about her so far? What kind of a woman is this? She is hard-working. You are exactly correct. She's been at it steady. She didn't even take time for a coffee break. What do we conclude? She is not a Norwegian. She's not a Norwegian. I didn't say it. I'm not Norwegian. But she didn't even take a break. Well, let's go a little further. Sharon, do you want to read here?
Then Boaz spoke to Ruth. Listen, my daughter, from now on, don't go to any other field to glean. Stay right here in this one, and stay close to my young women. Watch where they are harvesting and follow them. And don't worry about a thing. I've given orders to my servants not to harass you. When you get thirsty, feel free to go and drink from the water buckets that the servants have filled. She dropped to her knees, then bowed her face to the ground. How does this happen, that you should pick me out and treat me so kindly? Me, a foreigner?
Yes, look, I'm a foreigner, and how does it happen that you picked me out? Well, Boaz said, oh, I've heard all about you. Heard about the way you have treated your mother-in-law after the death of her husband and so on. Well, so the story continues a bit, and I want to get now over to chapter 3, if you turn the page. She gleaned in the field until evening. When she threshed out what she had, she ended up with nearly a full sack of barley. How is that for a day's work? Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. And she showed her mother-in-law the results of her day's work, and she also gave her the leftovers from her lunch. Well, what do we learn about this girl that came? Well, she's generous, she's hardworking, and start with verse 19. Who wants to read? Somebody from over here, starting with verse 19. Who wants to read?
Please. Naomi asked her, so where did you glean today? Whose field? God bless whoever it was who took such good care.
Yeah, where'd you glean? God bless whoever it was who took such good care of you. Go ahead.
Ruth told her mother-in-law, the man with whom I work today, his name is Boaz.
Not Boaz, she says. Why, God bless that man. God hasn't quite walked out on us after all. He still loves us in bad times as well as good. Continue.
Naomi went on, that man, Ruth, is one of our circle of covenant redeemers, a close relative of ours.
And the idea was, well, I'm thinking I had a friend who was a pastor, country pastor, near Sioux Falls, where we used to live. And I remember that when his wife died, who took over? He had a brother, and they just automatically, that's the way it went. So if you have a wife or a husband who dies, then the brother or wife takes over. Continue, please.
Ruth the Moabitess said, well, listen to this. He also told me, stick with my workers until my harvesting is finished. Naomi said to Ruth, that's wonderful, dear daughter. Do that. You'll be safe in the company of his young women. No danger now of being raped in some stranger's field.
Oh, yeah, well, this was a danger apparently, or they wouldn't mention it here. Continue.
So Ruth did it. She stuck close to Boaz's young women, gleaning in the fields daily until both the barley and wheat harvesting were finished. And she continued living with her mother-in-law.
So she's living with her mother-in-law. All right, well, what is going to happen next? Now we go to chapter 3, Ruth chapter 3. And who wants to read? Somebody from back there? There she is. Would you read starting chapter 3, verse 1?
One day her mother-in-law, Naomi, said to Ruth, my dear daughter, isn't it about time I arranged a good home for you so you can have a happy life?
Yeah.
And isn't Boaz our close relative? The one with those young women you've been working with? Maybe it's time to make our move.
Oh, yes. Maybe it's time for us to make our move. Continue.
Tonight is the night of Boaz's barley harvest at the threshing floor.
Now, what's the threshing floor? This is going to be a place out on the edge of town where the winds blow, but they don't blow too hard. They're sort of steady, and so that the grain can fall down, the scraps, and the threshing process can continue. Please pick it up.
Take a bath, put on some perfume, get all dressed up, and go to the threshing.
All right. Take a bath, put on some of that nice perfume that your granddaughter gave you for Christmas, and let's just see what happens. Go ahead, continue.
But don't let him know you're there until the party is well underway and he's had plenty of food and drink.
Okay.
When you see him slipping off to sleep, watch where he lies down and then go there. Lie at his feet to let him know that you are available to him.
Now, lie at his feet. There are some scholars who point out that lie at his feet. Feet is often a euphemism for
Something else.
yes. I was looking for the word. Feet is a euphemism for something else. But on the other hand, it is feet. So the commentators go back and forth whether it means feet or something else. And all of it tells you more about the commentators than it does about the text. The rabbis. Okay, get up, but don't let him know you're there. Continue, please.
Then wait and see what he says. He'll tell you what to do.
He'll tell you what to do.
Suggestive.
Yeah.
Ruth says,
Well, I didn't write it. I preached on this one time in London, where we have our residence, and I preached on it, and a lady came out, one of our good friends actually, her husband's the boat motor dealer up in Longville, and she came out and she said, I didn't think, what's that for? Oh, it is. Hi, Pastor Lee. Well, I think I'm doing okay.
No,
you're not.
No, I can't figure out, I don't know how. I tried, and this ear thing doesn't make sense to me, but it works. Hold this instead.
Well, here we are.
Oh, my
Is that better?
Yay.
Is there a pocket?
Here,
Here's a pocket.
I don't mind.
Thank you. Well, what's happening? She went down to the threshing floor. Ruth said, okay, I'll do it just as you have told me. So she went down to the threshing floor and she put her mother-in-law's plan into action. Boaz had a good time, eating and drinking his fill. He felt great. Then he went off to get some sleep, lying down at the end of the stack of barley. Ruth quietly followed as she lay down to signal her availability for marriage. Well, tells you something about Peterson. That's the way he understands this. In the middle of the night, the man was suddenly started and sat up. Surprise! There was a woman asleep at his feet. He said, and who are you? She said, I'm Ruth. Huh? How do you like me so far? He said, I'm Ruth, your maiden. Take me under your protecting wing. You are my close relative, you know, in the circle of covenant redeemers. You do have the right to marry me if you want to. He said, well, God bless you, my dear daughter. What a splendid expression of love. And when you could have had your pick of any of the young men around town, and one translator says, who are running around town wearing tight jeans. It's not in here. You do have the right to marry me, and let's see, what else? And now, my dear daughter, don't worry about a thing. Everybody knows what a courageous woman you are, a real prize. You're right. I'm a close relative. But there is one even closer than I am. Oh. See, we thought we got the whole thing solved. But now we hear there's one who's even a closer relative than I. So stay the rest of the night. In the morning, if he wants to exercise his customary rights and responsibilities, he'll have his chance. But if not, as God lives, I will do it. I'll take over my responsibility as I should. Ruth slept at his feet until dawn, but she got up while it was still dark and wouldn't be recognized. Well, what? She doesn't want to be seen coming back from sleeping in this guy's pup tent or whatever. Then Boaz said to himself, no one must know getting there. We have a brand new trip. I won't comment on it. Ruth came to the threshing floor. So Boaz said, "Bring the shawl you're wearing and spread it out." She spread it out, and he poured it full of barley, 6 measures, put it on her shoulders. Then she went back to town. 16. Would you pick it up with 16, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
When she came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "And how did things go, my dear daughter?"
She's pretty interested in knowing how things went. Continue.
Ruth told her everything that the man had done for her, adding, "And he gave me all this barley besides 6 quarts. He told me, 'You can't go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" Naomi said, "Sit back and relax, my dear daughter, until we find out how things turn out. That man isn't going to fool around."
She says, I know Boaz. He's not the kind of guy that's going to put this off. He'll get things going. Continue.
Mark my words, he's going to get everything wrapped up today.
He'll get it all wrapped up. Well, we're getting close to time to wrap it up. And we'll finish this off next time. But anybody got any comments or questions or things to add or subtract or whatever? Yes, please.
So is this a May, September or May, December romance?
I have to think about this question. Is it May, September,
Or May, December romance?
or May,
Was
December?
Boaz a real old guy or was it?
Yeah, what do you think? Is Boaz a real old guy, or is he a young buck wearing tight Levi's, as one translator puts it?
Well, he's Naomi's generation, isn't he?
He's Naomi's generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably. Would he be eligible to live at the waters? That would be. The guy Rick Turner back here, he lives at the waters, you know.
Do we ever find out who the other person is who could
Yeah,
exercise the customary rights?
that's a good question. Do we ever find out who the other person is who could exercise these rights? Well, look at it as you read through it now, this next week. Yes.
So, since there was this expectation that, was it up to the female side of the family to find whoever this person was and say, "You owe it to us"? Or was it the responsibility in the Hebrew culture for that person to seek out somebody when he finds out his brother died?
Yeah. I do not know the answer to that. What would you say in our day? Whose responsibility is it?
Well, your story from South Dakota sounds like it was the brother who showed up and said,
Yeah.
"I'll help you with the farm."
Yeah, right. So I don't know, and I don't know if anybody has figured that one out, but it's a good question. Anybody else have a comment? Les, you got anything to say to it?
He never preached it.
Les has always got a good response. He's kind of just going along with the story. Yeah.
In 40 years of knowing Lester, I don't think he's ever dealt with the 3rd chapter of Ruth with this one.
You hear that? He said in 40 years of knowing Lester, I don't think he's ever dealt with the 3rd chapter of Ruth. I'm guessing he was absent the day they did that. But I like Lester. I think he knows how to handle such things. Well, it's a good story, isn't it? Isn't it a nice story? And you wonder what's going to come up now next. So hang on to it. Come back next week, and maybe they'll have a new speaker, better microphone. Yeah. All right, nice to see. Let's do this. Let's do one more Hine Matov. Let's have another song. Here we go. Hine Matovu Manabim Shevet Akim Namyata. Here we go. I taught this, I used to teach out at the Bible camp in South Dakota. How many of you have been to Outlaw Ranch? Yeah. And I taught there, and I always taught Hine Matol. So I taught that, and about 10 years later, I got a card in the mail from a person who said, I was at that camp. I learned that song, and I've taught it to my campers. I'm at Camp Koinonia in New York. Anybody know that Bible camp? Yeah, well, at Camp Koinonia. Well, she said, so I taught my campers, and we were going through the woods singing camp songs, Home on the Range and stuff like that. And we did Hine Matov, and she said, when we finished, we heard somebody else singing the same song. And here came a group of Jewish campers, and they knew it in Hebrew, so we sang it in Hebrew, the Jews and the Lutherans, and I think God must have enjoyed hearing it that day. Go, we'll see you next week.